This video is brought to you by all of my wonderful patrons and channel members, and if you are a patron or channel member, make sure you go check your feeds because there was a new exclusive put out yesterday and I'm going to have another one out today. And if you aren't a patron or channel member, I would recommend becoming one if you want to get some extra content. Exclusive extra content. Made up stories and all. And without any further ado, let's begin. This happened a couple of months ago now, but when it first happened, given how crazy it was, it took me a few weeks to collect myself enough to type it up and post it. It's relevant for me to tell you up front that I'm a military veteran and I have PTSD and anxiety as well as a pretty bad case of depression that I'm currently in my third year of. I've read that CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, can massively improve PTSD symptoms and in turn help to reduce anxiety, so I've been trying various techniques at home. The problem there is my wife and I live in a small 2-bedroom ground floor flat with an upstairs neighbor with absolutely no concept of other people. A jock douchebag type who's a personal trainer but he trains at home too, 'cause gains. The kind of guy whose only two topics of conversations are protein powder and steamed rice. I'm sure you can imagine the type. Anyway, with that being a constant issue, meditation and quiet mindlessness are just not possible with the constant noise. My solution was to do my normal routine during the day, but take advantage of my insomnia later on. At around 2300 through 0000, I would put on my coat and shoes, and as we live near the beach, I figured I could walk to the beach now that there's pretty much no people around, walk on the sand and be mindful to the sounds of the ocean. Sounds nice, doesn't it? It was for the first 2 times, but you know what they say, the third time's a charm. The walk to the beachfront home isn't far, maybe a little over a mile, but once I got there I would walk to the very end of the beach until you reached the cliffs where there was a World War II artillery gun turret, which was another half-mile-ish. Sometimes I would walk the path up the cliff to the gun and stare out into the blackness of the midnight ocean, which was only broken by the occasional flash of light from the lighthouse. I would sit and listen to the waves crashing against the cliffs. Sometimes I would close my eyes and just concentrate on nothing but that sound. I felt safe there, knowing I was alone. Just me and the ocean. Usually before I would turn tail and head home, I would walk down to a small row of benches. They're all marked with plaques in remembrance to someone who also came to enjoy the view, although I imagine they came during the day. The benches are close to an old pub that was shut down years ago, and I heard the place used to get used as a dogging site or a brothel or something back in the day. So when I saw vehicle headlights coming towards the pub, I figured it was just some young lads trying to catch potential doggers at it. I sat on the bench and waited for the car to pass me, but as it rounded a bend in the road further up, I was momentarily lit up by headlamps. The headlamps of the vehicle went off immediately and the car went off-road and out of sight for a moment. At this point, I was fully alert and a bit cautious, so I dropped to one knee and ducked behind the bench I was sitting on. The vehicle drove past me, and as the lighthouse illuminated the vehicle, I could now see it was an old beat-up Land Rover kind of vehicle with shitty camo paint on the wings. At that moment, someone popped out of the top of the vehicle with a scoped rifle and a big torch. In that instant, in my head, I was back in Iraq and my senses felt razor sharp. I dropped onto my belt buckle and crawled into a path of long grass adjacent to the benches. Then I got in a position where I could see them, but they couldn't see me. The guy with the rifle shone his torch at the exact bench I was sitting on, then the others searching for me. He started looking all around him with the scope, looking where I might have gone. My heart was pounding so hard I felt as if they could hear it. I held my sleeve over my mouth to muffle the sound of my breathing, but more importantly to try and hide the condensation of my breath. The vehicle started to move to get a better view of the benches, so I started slowly crawling towards the main road as not only was there a row of houses, but an old stone bus stop I could take hard cover if they saw me and opened fire. After about 5 minutes of hiding in the long grass, it started to rain and they were still clearly looking for me, but they were now about 150 feet away. The guy with the rifle was scanning around with his eye down scope, so I waited until he was looking away from me to seize my moment to run for cover. I pushed my hands hard into the wet dirt to launch myself onto my feet, Then I sprinted towards the bus stop while throwing some zigzags in just in case they had seen me. Luckily they hadn't, and I was now far enough away that I could take my phone out and call the police. They were there with a riot van and a squad car in about 10 minutes, and as I was talking to the officers in the van, they spotted the gunner's vehicle and took off after them. The officer in the squad car stayed behind to talk to me. The rain was coming down in sheets by now. They asked me if I was absolutely sure it was a rifle, and I told them yes, it was 100%. No doubt in my mind at all. The officers both looked at each other, and then one of them asked, "And what exactly is your experience with firearms?" I told them I was ex-Army and I've seen my fair share of all kinds of firearms. They then asked me what I was doing there after midnight, which is a pretty fair question to be honest. I explained that quite unironically I was taking a mindfulness walk to ease my PTSD symptoms. They were satisfied with that explanation, if not somewhat amused, and told me that the armed response unit was en route. I asked if they needed me to stay behind to make a statement, but the officers told me not to bother waiting around because they most likely wouldn't need to take a statement beyond the call I made, and also it was pissing down rain, so I should get home and get dry. It was over, but I still felt super wired and my heart was still thumping hard in my chest. I started the walk home, and when I was about halfway there, a police helicopter buzzed overhead and settled over the area where I had been sitting on the benches with the searchlight going. It was right then it hit me like a shotgun to the chest. That happened. That was fucking real and it was here. What the fuck? My head started swimming. My heart was pounding twice as hard now and my legs felt like jelly and my lungs felt glitchy. I couldn't breathe properly. I dropped to my knees crying in the street in the pouring rain, the only light coming from a nearby street lamp with a flickering bulb. I was gasping for breath, thoughts flashing in my head, thinking that if I had stayed still, if I hadn't hunched behind the bench, if I had done any number of things differently or hadn't, then I could have gurgled my last breath alone in the dark in the cold, wet dirt, and my wife would have been none the wiser till the following day. I have no idea if they were even there for me, and if they were, how could they have known I'd been there? I'd been there twice before, I suppose. It's not like there's animals to hunt there beyond foxes. But why hunt foxes from a vehicle with a rifle and a torch at midnight? Anyway, I'm not ashamed to say that experience terrified me. I guess my army training helped me to stay alert and stay hidden, but I really don't know. I don't go walking at night anymore, and I have the occasional nightmare about the whole thing. A little update. So today I made a call to the local police to try and get an update on what happened. After a quick description of what the initial incident was, the officer on the phone, I assume she was an officer, was able to find the incident report right away. Basically, the first officers on the scene had confirmed that they had seen the vehicle and they had gone in an off-road pursuit. They said they'd given chase over difficult terrain for as long as they were able to, then the vehicle turned off all the lights and made an escape using the dark as cover. The armed response units were called as a precaution and patrolled the entire area with a helicopter dispatched in order to try and locate the vehicle with heat cameras. Both teams were unsuccessful in finding them, as by the time they arrived on scene they had already gotten away. CCTV was also checked but yielded absolutely nothing. I told her I was sorry if they felt I had wasted their time and that I guess I had overreacted on account of my PTSD. She told me that as far as they're concerned, I did the right thing. She also said that there has been a few isolated accounts of gunshots having been heard in the area over the last few years, so maybe rethink taking my walks so late at night. I didn't have the energy to explain again why I used to wait until so late to go walking, but any advice about avoiding getting shot is good advice. So instead I agreed with her and ended the call. After I hung up, I just sat there a few minutes going over the whole thing in my head. It was most likely nothing when it was all said and done, but if nothing else, it's taught me that being hypervigilant isn't always such a bad thing. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, share it with your friends, all that good stuff. And if you want to help support the channel, I would recommend checking out the Patron link in the description or becoming a channel member by clicking the join button by subscribe. Both methods offer some really cool perks that I think a lot of you would enjoy. I hope you're all having a great day, and I really do appreciate you checking out this video. And I will catch you in the next one. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true. Bad bye.